You know, I could probably sit here today and tell you guys a list of players that I think are underrated, but I'm not. I'm only going to focus on one. One guy that's far too underappreciated when talking about the all-time greats, when in reality he should be. And the crazy thing is that a majority of NBA fans know who this player is. What's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops. And today I'm going to be telling you guys about the most underrated player in NBA history. Now, if you can see some of the stuff on the screen, 9-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA, scoring champion, that's a lot. And actually, there's only been 12 other players in NBA history that have done that. Bob Pettit, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, George Gervin, Michael Jordan, David Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Kevin Durant. And actually, this player is also one of 8 players to average 25 plus points per game for 10 straight years. The others being Jerry West, Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. This player is Dominique Wilkins. Now, most people know the human highlight film famously for his dunks, but actually he was robbed in a few dunk contests too. I mean, most people know Nate Robinson has the most dunk contest wins with 3, but Dominique is close with 2. And actually, he was robbed in 1986 for his teammate Spud Webb just because he was 5'7". A lot of the dunks that Dominique Wilkins was doing was far more superior than Spud Webb's, but just because he was a short guy dunking, he ended up winning the competition. And there is an argument that he probably should have won in 1988 over Michael Jordan as well. Now, that's not as obvious as the Spud Webb one, but regardless, he probably had a very good case to win 1988 as well. Not only was he snubbed in dunk contests, but he was also snubbed from the Dream Team in place of guys like Chris Mullin and Christian Laettner. Now, the year before, Dominique Wilkins compared to Chris Mullin was statistically more efficient, a better scorer, a better rebounder than Mullin, and with only one less win for his team compared to Chris Mullin's 1990-1991 Golden State Warriors squad. As for Christian Laettner, what do I have to say, really? I mean, he wasn't a bad NBA player, but a then-future one-time All-Star should not be credited over a talent like Dominique Wilkins. I think most of us can agree with that. And just looking at Dominique Wilkins' career, he did not have the help that a lot of superstar players did. He had 3 All-Star teammates for his entire career, meaning he played along a person that made the All-Star team in the same year that he was their teammate. That was Doc Rivers once, Kevin Willis made it once, and then also Moses Malone made it at the tail end of his prime. When looking at other small forwards that are considered at the top of the small forward list of all time, Kevin Durant got that in his first year with the Golden State Warriors and has 13 total. LeBron will have 15 total once Anthony Davis is named an All-Star this year. Larry Bird had 23 total, and Scottie Pippen had 13 total. Now, granted, a majority of those are actually just Michael Jordan, but regardless, everyone had double digits on that list. As for Dominique, not really. And a lot of people like to underrate him or undervalue him per se, mainly because he didn't have playoff success or didn't really make it anywhere in the playoffs, to say that. And that's kind of unfortunate. Maybe if he would have had a little bit better support around him, he probably could have closed out some of these series as well. But the closest they came was probably in 1988 when they were playing the Boston Celtics. Now, they had played the Boston Celtics multiple times over the past few years and lost all those times. But they lost this time in the semifinals 4-3. And actually, they were up 3-2 in the series. And then they lost games 6 and 7. But losing games 6 and 7, that was not to the fault of Dominique Wilkins. Actually, in those 2 games, he averaged 41 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and shot 32 of 63, which is equivalent to about 51% from the field. Not to mention, they lost games 6 and 7 by 2 points each, 102-100 and 118-116 respectively. Just imagine if they would have had a little bit more support from some of the other guys than just Dominique trying to go crazy. Another reason a lot of people write him off is because he kind of had a short prime, and a lot of that is due to the Achilles injury that he suffered in 1992. But the thing is, he actually recovered. Now, he wasn't the same athletic-wise, but still from a performance standpoint, he played really good. And actually, in the season that he played, he averaged 30 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game on 47% from the field, coming off an Achilles injury, which is just unheard of. I mean, we've seen people whose careers turn for the worse. I mean, recently DeMarcus Cousins has dealt with that injury. We've seen Brandon Jennings recently have that same sort of issue. So a lot of people just don't really recover from it. And to see a guy like Dominique Wilkins, who played arguably better in this season compared to years before, that's just like insane. That's probably one of the craziest stories in NBA history, honestly. That's very overlooked. And in the 1993 playoffs, he really didn't let up either. Yes, of course, they did lose, but they were playing the future NBA champion Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. But he did average 30 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 3 assists per game in the playoffs, which is still very amazing. And most of this really comes down to the luck that Dominique Wilkins had to suffer with during his time with the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, he had 3 coaches during his tenure there, whereas you look at other people, most of them only had 1 coach, such as like Tim Duncan, who's seen as arguably the greatest power forward ever. But what if he had a ton of coaches like Dominique Wilkins? Who knows if he would be seen in that light? And it's ironic because Lenny Wilkins, who is arguably one of the best coaches ever, he's definitely up there, came the year that Dominique Wilkins was traded. And that's probably the dumbest thing about Dominique Wilkins' career. Why was he traded? Actually, at the time, the Atlanta Hawks, they were 36-16 in the 1993-1994 season. Everyone thought they had a chance now that Jordan had officially retired for the first time, and the Atlanta Hawks were making good use of it. In fact, they were actually the first seed in the East at this point. And then they traded their best player, Dominique Wilkins, to the Los Angeles Clippers in exchange for Danny Manning. Now, both Danny Manning and Dominique Wilkins left the Hawks and Clippers respectively in their offseason, but it's just insane that this trade even happened. Being first place in the standings, they're actually the only team ever to trade their leading scorer when in first place in the standings at the time of the trade. And for the entirety of that season, it's not like Dominique Wilkins was playing bad either. 26 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, very acceptable. And as for Danny Manning, he really was kind of a disappointment with the Hawks. I mean, his points per game dropped by about 8 points per game. Granted, he was coming to a better team, but still, you kind of expect more. But a lot of the blame for Dominique Wilkins' career turning out the way it is, not as successful per se, has to be on the Hawks general managers. First, we got Stan Kasten, who was the general manager of the Hawks from 1979 to 1990. He really didn't bring in hardly any help. He was not building a championship contender, which is what you need to be doing with a guy like Dominique Wilkins on your team, who was arguably a top 5, top 10 player in the league at that point. And I mean, they were really close to beating the Celtics multiple times. And the Celtics, they were always making a run at the championship, so that can just show how close they were, really. The other guy is named Pete Babcock, who was the general manager of the Atlanta Hawks from 1990, taking over for Kasten, until 2003. Now, he brought in a lot of solid players on the team, but really, he gets a lot of the blame just for trading Dominique Wilkins. I mean, he also traded a pick with Dominique, which really didn't make much sense, just to get Danny Manning, who was only there for half the season and eventually left. Basically, to put into perspective, trading for Danny Manning for the Atlanta Hawks was like if the Raptors lost to the Sixers last year in the Eastern Conference semifinals and then Kawhi still left to go to the LA Clippers. In his later years, Dominique Wilkins kind of bounced around from EuroLeague to Greece and came back in the NBA to play for teams like the Celtics, the Spurs, the Magic. But really, he's just underrated and underappreciated by the media, the fans, and the league itself. I mean, this is a guy that didn't even make an all-star team until his 4th year in the league, not to mention that he made the playoffs his first 2 years of his career while averaging ludicrous numbers as always. So it really doesn't make sense as to why the league wouldn't grant him with an all-star appearance. And really, if he was just on a better team with better management, he probably could have won some championships, maybe at least one, probably an MVP as well. And we might be talking about him as potentially a top 3 to 5 small forward, but obviously we aren't. Most people would rather throw out names like LeBron James, Larry Bird, Kevin Durant, Scottie Pippen, Julius Erving, and Elgin Baylor over him. But guys, that's basically going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I just think more people need to put more appreciation on Dominique Wilkins. I mean, a lot of people do that with Tracy McGrady, and I feel like he was in a very similar situation to Dominique Wilkins in more modern NBA style. So I think it's only right that we can give Wilkins the same credit since he was only about 10 to 15 years before him. But once again, I hope you did enjoy the video, and I think that's going to do it for me. Subscribe to see some more content like this. I do like doing these videos. But yeah, and I'm out. Peace.